What up? I'm Ben Freeman from FreemanPD.com, and this is SAQs Day. This is where I take some of the SAQs that are still relevant to the course and break them down with you with a few tips and tricks along the way. Today, this SAQs Day, we have the most recent SAQ you could possibly have, and that's from the 2022 AP World History Modern Exam. And that's this one, the 2022 SAQ on the Mongols. Rule number 1, focus the lens. What are we looking for in this stimulus? I know, it has words. That's the worst, having to read. And really because, it takes up time and you're timed on this test and that can slow you down. So you don't want to just jump in, see a bunch of words and be like, oh, what am I supposed to do? Have to read it twice. If you have to read it twice, that's the worst. So what you want to do is make sure you go in knowing what you're looking for. You need a map, and you get that map from the actual A, B, and C from the prompter. That's what you should be looking for, not just randomly reading a bunch of stuff. So let's check out A, B, and C to see what you're looking for. When you have these in front of you, write on these. You can see right here, A, B, and C. You should be underlining circle. Don't underline and circle every single thing on here. But feel free to find what's key, because that's what you're looking for. You'll notice if you were with us last week, this one is a little more complex because it's from this year. It's the more modern one. So feel free to write on them, underline. I would underline or circle the keywords. Here's the ones I would do. Look at letter A. Identify one economic development that would support Baran's argument in the passage regarding the Mongols and the integration of the old world. So what? So when you're reading that, make sure, okay, what does it want? I have to identify an economic development. Economic development, that's the thing I need. I'm gonna read something in a minute. I need to look for an economic development. And so for B, it's asking you to challenge the argument that the Mongols were the first chapter of a new era. So I would, I'm challenging. And that one's even bolded for you. I didn't do that. So you can challenge the argument there. And then for C, they're looking for an intercultural transfer. So something that exchanged or went back and forth across areas because of the Mongol conquest. If you can explain that. So A, what's an economic development that would support what Baran's saying? B, what's a challenge to that argument? And C, kind of on your own, off stimuli here, it's one intercultural transfer exchange that resulted from those conquests. So I need to find it. I need to know that. So you're not going to get out of there. But there's asking you for an example, so that's a pretty easy one. So these are the 3 distinct things they want you to find in that stimulus, which we haven't looked at yet, but we're about to. We have the focus. Let's check the stimulus. You could pause this and read it here. Or not, but basically you got some secondary historian in 2004 talking about the Mongols and how they're a new chapter in world history, how they're leading into the early modern period, 1450 to 1750. They are the ones that are leading that chapter. It's the Mongols' existence and what they did that caused that. And then they talk about the key role that they played in the intercultural exchange. The Mongols are super cool to go over in class for your teacher, for you. They're really exciting. It's a wild story. It's the closest we've come to an Avengers level threat in world history since World War II. So besides what it's World War II and the Mongol, that's the big scary thing that the world is and you see it in the writings. Every culture the Mongols go to have a story where they're well, this is the end. We're all dying now. This is the Armageddon that was foretold. Everyone's saying that, right? So this is that level of event. And that's super fun to cover and talk about and read and all that stuff. If you're into history, the Mongols are cool. But the College Board doesn't care. The College Board really wants to know about these exchanges back and forth and how they kind of expedited that. You could see here how their empire and the Khanates allowed for the transfer of information, ideas, technology, diseases, that's what the College Board cares about. They don't care about horses and arrows, which are awesome. So that's what they're after here. We've read A, B, and C. We've looked at the stimulus using our special focus on what A, B, and C was talking about. Let's answer the prompt. So here they are again. For A, identify. That simply requires you to name something that answers it. You don't have to explain it, but if you can, do it. It helps. It may actually give you a little bit more specificity than what you were just thinking off the top of your head. So if you kind of write it out and just keep going with it for a second, instead of just being oh, X or oh, Y. If you just X because or Y because, you talk it out a little, you write it out a little more, you're going to be more likely to get that point just because you're probably going to let them know what you mean. So if it's a clear cut identify and you just oh, this is the answer, fine. But if you know you, if your answer's a little vague and you're then maybe write out what you mean or what you're trying to get at, you could get the point that way. So what supports Baran's argument about integrating the old world? So I would go with the Mongol expansion, how they supported and expanded the Silk Road trade. That supports what she's talking about. For B is a monster. Why? You gotta challenge this lady. Yeah, I looked up Michelle Baran. She's a professor of Asian studies at a university in Jerusalem. Yeah, she's a big deal, and you have to challenge her. The College Board loves this move. They love to make you read something from some like esteemed historian professor type, and then be like, why don't you prove them wrong, right? Don't do that in college. The professor's not gonna like that, but here they ask you to do it. But in this case, it's actually kind of doable. And you could go a couple of ways here. First, the new era she's talking about for most historians isn't until around 1450, and the Mongols are mostly gone as a global power by then. So most people think of the inclusion of the New World as the big change around 1492 into a more global world, like your Columbus stuff, your Da Gama stuff, that kind of spreading out, and Columbian exchange as being a bigger deal, a bigger like page chapter turner specifically than the Mongols were. And in that same vein, you could have gone with the fact that the Mongols were pastoral nomads and didn't really add anything. Rather, they just kind of like opened up the channels and allowed them to move through. So it was stuff moving around. It wasn't their stuff and it wasn't new stuff to them. So them being kind of these like fast forwarders of history, maybe not. Finally, C. This is an easy one, but it is an explain, which requires a bit more effort from you, but it's literally word for word lifted out of the curriculum. So sometimes they'll ask stuff in an essay that's literally lifted directly word for word out of the curriculum, and that's what they did here. So explaining any of the stuff the Mongols helped spread around in their massive empire: Islam, Buddhism, gunpowder, bubonic plague, algebra, Arabic numerals, on. A ton of stuff, right? Mongols are a big deal. Any of that stuff is gonna get you the point. But you can't just say algebra. It's not going to get it right. You need to explain how that resulted from the Mongol conquest. So you need to literally say so the Mongols conquested ... algebra. You need to ... That's what explain is. You need to fill that in the middle. So there it is. The 2022 Mongol SAQ. Remember, you got about 14 minutes on each of these, so you can't be sitting there all the time being like, should I focus my lens here? Like, you need to move, so I'm just trying to give you these skills so you know when you jump in, I need to read A, B, and C. I need to go to that stimulus, find what I need, and then I need to answer them and move on. Next week, we stay with the 2022 AP World History Modern exam. I'm a big fan of the 2022. It's a very fine vintage. I would argue it's the best AP World History exam I've ever seen. The SAQs, the LEQs, the DBQs, the MCQs, all of them were very, very doable, which I think is most important for you, but also covered a wide variety of stuff. It's just a great exam, so you didn't take this last year, so it doesn't really matter to you, but it's a good one to practice on. So if you're looking for SAQs, DBQs, LEQs, any of the FRQs, 2022 is a good place to go. So let's meet back here next SAQs day for a look at the Columbian Exchange.